We appreciate you all being here tonight. My name is Nandi Bayard. I'm in 11th grade here at Friends Select. I'm a co-leader of the Black Student Union, and I'm president of the student government. I will be co-hosting tonight's event along with Adia.
I'm Adia Osborne. I'm also a junior here at Friends Select. I'm a member of the BSU as well as future leader of our jazz club and a prominent member in the theater community here.
Before we begin, I'll give you all an overview of today's program. We'll start the event by playing the first 25 minutes of the 6th episode of the 1619 Project. We'll pause and introduce our guest, Ms. Shoshana Guy. Adia and I will ask our first question to her. Then we'll play the final 35 minutes of the film, and we'll ask another question to Ms. Shoshana. The remaining 10 to 15 minutes will be for an open Q&A with participation from the audience members. We'll get started right away with the first 25 minutes of the film. Again, thank you all for being here tonight. Enjoy.
Nandi and I are so excited for you all to hear from Shoshana Guy this evening. We've had the pleasure of speaking with her multiple times today with our BSU and in history class, and she is absolutely amazing to hear from. To formally introduce her, Shoshana Guy is a showrunner, producer, and director based in Brooklyn, New York. She most recently served as the showrunner on Hulu's The 1916 Project and co-directed the Race episode. Before her work on the 1619 Project, she was a showrunner for the Peabody Award and NAACP Image Award winning Netflix original series High on the Hog, which is amazing. I've watched it as well. After attaining a master's degree from the Columbia School of Journalism, Shoshana Guy began her career in journalism in the halls of NBC News, working as an anchor producer for over a decade and producing for Tom Brokaw and Brian Williams. Her work at NBC focused on issues of race and justice, and her coverage surrounding the defunding of the Camden Police Department earned her a Peabody Award, and she received 2 Emmy nominations for her coverage of President Obama's re-election campaign and her work on A Year in the Life of Black high school students in Jackson, Mississippi. Ms. Shoshana has contributed to projects on PBS, MTV, CTV, National Geographic, Epix, A&E, and Apple TV, and has worked extensively overseas, and we are so honored to have her here with us at Friends Select today. Let's welcome Shoshana Guy onto the stage.
Thank you, ladies. Can I sit in the middle? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.
I saw you in
Nice to see you too.
Great History this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to jump right into our first
do it.
question.
Okay.
So thinking back all the way to the beginning of the episode,
Okay.
there was a song playing called Who'll Pay Reparations on My Soul.
Mm-hmm.
Black people are certainly owed an abundance of monetary reparations. However, Black people face a lot of inequities in terms of mental and physical health as well. I think about the alarming rates of Black maternal mortality to the weathering effect of racial discrimination on one's physical health, all the way to the idea of post-traumatic slave syndrome coined by Joy DeGruy. So my question is to you, what would reparations on the soul look like for Black people?
Oh, it's such a good question.
Thank you.
I saw it earlier. I was like, whew, that's a hard question. Well, you know, I think it's a very difficult question because it's a very layered, they're very layered issues. But I think it really starts at education and Black people having, you know, reparations is about money, first and foremost. There's all sorts of reparations efforts happening across the globe, but those who, across the country, but those who really are, you know, sort of purists in the reparations movement and in the reparations effort, contend that it must be resolved by the federal government, since the federal government, you'll see that in the back half of the episode, but money, cash, to be clear. But that, you know, that can fuel access to things, and I think what we really need in terms of our soul, you know, is a myriad of things. We need access to education. We need clean water. We need good access to food. We need access to you know, unpack generations of trauma that's in our bodies and continues to, you know, pass down from generation to generation. So I think access to resources helps us to get access to the things that can feed our soul. And that's all the things that I just mentioned. But it's a very good question.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Do we have time for another question, I think?
Sure. You got to do one and one. You got to do one and one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is getting a little personal a little bit.
That's okay.
So in my immediate and extended family, as well as in my friend group, wealth and money in general has always been a challenging subject to speak about. The conversation with money and building generational wealth for Black people is really not spoken about as much in the community as it maybe should be. And in this episode, as we'll see in the next 35 minutes, it is basically what the entire thing is almost about. So I wanted to ask, why was it essential for you to bring this conversation to television and make an entire episode focusing on reparations and Black wealth?
Yeah, I mean, it's what, in order to repair the country, we're owed. Black people are owed in this country. And so it's a conversation that people don't want to have. It's a conversation that people have been having for a very long time, and it's just sort of starting to pick up speed now, But I think understanding, and this is something that I'm, at my age, just coming to an understanding about what actually wealth means. I think a lot of us think about wealth as how much money we can make in our job, and that's not actually wealth. Wealth is, being able to pass the home on that I have to my nieces and nephews. I think for a long time in my personal life, I, come from, humble means and a father who really grew up in abject poverty. And so the idea was like, I'll just, I'll get this house and that'll be it. That's my retirement plan. And then thinking, oh, that's actually not wealth, because I'm gonna have to sell it at some point to live on it. So really, I wanted the country to understand what is owed to Black people, but I also wanted Black people to understand what wealth is, what's owed to us, and how we can start to think about money in a different way, to your point, because it's hard to talk about. And so this is something that I'm just learning in my own life right now.
Thank you for that. That was great. That was a great answer. Okay.
We're going to continue
Finish
with
the episode?
final 35 minutes.
This
of
is
the
an interesting
episode.
format you guys have put together. I've never done this before. Yeah, let's finish the episode and then we'll get back to talking. Okay.
Thank you.
In your and Nicole Hannah-Jones's interview with the Hollywood Reporter, you mentioned the reason you do this work as a journalist and a showrunner of these series is because you believe in storytelling. And even today you said that you're a storyteller with the focus on Black history and the Black story in America. So what made you want to tell such diverse stories of the history of Black Americans as you did in the 1619 Project?
Because I'm so proud of who we are. What we've contributed to this country is just really remarkable. And a lot of these histories we just don't really even know. We're not taught them. They're not presented to us. So, for two reasons really. One is that I'm extremely proud to be Black. Then it's just so dope to be Black. We're just amazing. And I want to showcase that. But also I want justice. And I want the country to understand, Nicole always says this, I've said this numerous times today, but this is our history as Americans. It's not just Black history, this is American history. It applies to everybody, and we're all living with the repercussions of slavery every day, whether we acknowledge it or not, it is impacting us. And it's time for us to work together to get it right, and so storytelling can be used as a tool to help people understand on an emotional level, on an intellectual level. It's a way to access information. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll finish with our last question before we open it up to the audience.
Okay.
As it was mentioned in this episode, Black people were emancipated from enslavement, but they were really left empty-handed. This led to the racial wealth gap and a lot of racial inequalities that we see today. Wealth is not just about the joy of having money, but it brings access to quality education, access to healthcare, and access to overall security for generations. So what do you think is the best way for Black people to accumulate wealth for themselves and future generations?
Big questions. They're big questions. I'm not really great with numbers. Anyone can in my life can attest to that. But I think that we really need to have literacy, financial literacy. We really need to understand what money is. Even on my block, and I live in Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, and I'm seeing it's gentrifying very quickly, and I'm seeing a lot of families that have had, homes there for 50 years, losing them because they, took bad loans or didn't leave wills. So I think financial literacy, I think, is really important. Understanding what money is and our relationship to money. Getting past, again, I'm working on this presently, getting past the traumas we have around money, because there isn't enough of it all the time. So it's like you're constantly seeing the things that happen and unfold in your household are often a result of money. Parents are fighting about money, it's like, well, there's not enough, And so we develop these attitudes towards money. And thirdly, I think education. Education is going to just afford you more opportunities and more access. Because really, money a lot of times is about having access to places and to things and to different experiences, so that you can, accrue more of it. And that really comes through education. So I would say those three things.
Thank you.
Great questions, ladies. You did a great job.
Thank you so much.
And really quickly, before we open it up to the audience for questions, I wanted to say that I know I can speak for other people when I say this. It's very important to me and very life-changing for me to see my story and my people portrayed on the television, accurately, and to be able to learn the history that is hidden from us. So I really, it was really a very powerful experience watching the 1619 Project and really having that translated to me in this format as a series, as something that I would watch. And I really wanted to thank you. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. You. That's why I do the work. You're welcome.
And now we will open it up to the audience for questions. So you can raise your hand, and then Dave will come around with a microphone.
No questions. There's got to be a question.
First of all, it was very great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask, so you co-directed the 1619 Project.
The second episode.
The second episode. During your experience there, what would you say was one of the most important things to keep in mind as you were directing it, when in regards to showcasing Black life?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Hi. I think the most important thing is, particularly in that episode, we were dealing with really deep and painful issues as they relate to Black women. We're talking about, the commodification of our wombs and the use of our wombs for profit and the systemic rape that we endured. And we were talking to women, and so it's a very vulnerable space to be in, and so that episode, but all the way that I approach my work in general is that people gift us their stories, and they're very precious, and they have to be really taken care of. So that's, the integrity around the way that you treat people and the work that you have to do to accurately depict story and make sure that it's nuanced in the way that people are is really the work. And so that's the thing that's most important to me. Thank you for that question. Yes. Hi.
Actually,
She's projecting. Oh, okay. Getting the mic anyway.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Burgundy. So I heard you talk, you mentioned kind of your own healing process. And I have a question for you, but I also want to invite everyone in the audience to think about this for themselves. And that is, what are you doing? What are we doing to heal through these traumas today so that we don't give them to our next generations? and it's real work. It's
Yeah.
real work for Black folk, it's real work for white folk, it's real work for men, it's real work for women, because oppression is everywhere. So I'm curious about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is work and it's daily practice, right? I think that consistency and practice at things, whatever you're doing in your personal life in terms of like ritual, habit, making sure that you're caring for yourself. It's something that is a challenge for me, as a kind of like powerhouse woman who's like leading teams and really, I've really had to learn how to take care of myself, and that's physically, that's making sure I get exercise, and it is a daily practice because I'm not always successful, but I see how I'm better when I am caring for myself in that way. So I think, taking care of yourself physically, taking downtime. I'm often told, slow down. I'm like, but I can't. I think those are the important, things. Practice, whatever your practices are, whether they're spiritual practice or exercise practices, or and then being in community, I think is really important. My community is really important to me. Being able to share things with them, lean on them, being able to support them as well, and constantly expanding your community and inviting new people into your community that might not have similar experiences, I think is valuable. Yes. Hi.
One thing that was a glaring. One thing that was a glaring pronouncement by mainly United States senators, white of course, that, well, we shouldn't feel bad about something that happened 150 years ago. Mm-hmm. So there's one thing that, for instance, in the New Testament, the word repentance, mm-hmm. in the Greek it's metanoia. And it doesn't mean sad, and it doesn't mean hurt, and it doesn't mean anything like that. It just means to change your mind. Yeah. So one thing that white people hate, hey, I'm white.
I noticed.
Is, thank you, and I see you, is they hate to be called out on their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and the one thing to open that dialogue where may have been a long time ago. I wasn't there, I didn't do it, but that's a human being in my world. Mm-hmm. So, and the one thing that was also glaring was the fact that, and we're talking about reparations, it was money. Dr. King never had a threat, a significant threat against him until Chicago.
Mm-hmm. So he talked about money.
And that was when he started talking about money.
Yeah.
So the one thing is that both white folks and black folks have to get to the point to where they can talk about, look, we got to do something, or we're going to destroy ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and thank you for your vulnerability. Yeah. I think Nicole always says this, and I think it's really important to understand that this work isn't about blaming white people. It's like, you gotta get over it. It's not about blaming. It's about really understanding the world that we're all living in together, the country that we're living in together, and how can we make it a better place for everybody. And that is really gonna be by working together. And we're just in a, we were talking about it earlier today with the faculty, we're just in a really rough spot right now where we're just so polarized and we can't, the ideas that we once disagreed but could still have a drink afterwards have just evaporated. And so, I think we're clearly going to need to work together. So, and create spaces where we can really, and Brian Stevenson, if you know his work, always says this, like, the truth and reconciliation. Like, you can't have reconciliation until you have the truth, and we're just in this place where there's still a lot of resistance to the truth. So yeah.
Expend as much energy trying to fix the problem instead of placing the blame.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for this evening. It's been amazing. And ladies on the stage, thank you for you as well and all the work you've done. With all the vitriol that is being spewed at Black Americans, especially in light of the recent legislative attacks that have been happening, do you ever get discouraged in the fight for justice and equality? And if so, what is the way that you sort of stir up that resilience and endurance to keep moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in short, I do get discouraged. I get frustrated, I get angry. But my offering, my contribution is through storytelling and is through offering information and putting information in ways that an audience can digest. So I just have to move on to the next thing and start over and start, I'm already on another project, I'm creating something new, and there's always learning in it. And I guess that's how I buoy myself, which is that there's always something to learn, and I remain curious. I stay curious, and I think that is something that is able to dissolve my frustration. And I also have a great support network around me, in my family and my friends and my community and my loved ones. So, but yeah, it's just normal. I mean, I used to get a lot more angry, and it just kind of starts to burn you out. I mean, I worked in the halls of NBC News for over a decade. Oh, I was mad. They're like, oh God, here she comes again. But yeah, so thank you for that. I think there was one back there.
Thank you so much for the high quality work that you've produced and the inspiring stories that you've been telling us. I have been teaching for 30 years, and I've taught at, I think, 7 different schools, and at every school that I've taught at, there has been an achievement gap. Mm-hmm. And I went into teaching in part to try to be part of the solution, to help, to teach, to inspire, empower young people, especially young people of color. And so as an educator, it's just been very frustrating for me to see this pattern repeated at every level that I've been at, mm-hmm. where schools don't serve African American students mm-hmm. as well as they serve white students and Asian students. And I'm not sure what we as educators can do. It is a problem in our society as a whole. It's not just on our shoulders. But I'm wondering if you could speak to the achievement gap, and especially since your answer to one of the moderator's questions earlier was the importance of education.
Yeah.
So how can we make education more empowering for African American students?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for your work. Keep going, don't give up. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a good, because I believe that there can be good policing as well, but we don't see it very often. But good police officers or good police chiefs will tell you, like, we can't arrest our way out of the situation because there's so much that goes on outside of the classroom. So, your contribution is inside of the classroom. I don't know, it's like, I can tell you, like, yeah, teach all day and then grade your papers and then go to the community board meeting and, do this and that. But I do think that the solutions are probably more outside of the classroom than in. You're pouring all of your work and your effort, and I think there's probably different, I'm not a educator, I don't know, but I think, we were talking about using 1619 and creating a curricula, and I think there's different ways one can have tools of engaging students more. But I think that if parents aren't engaged with them, if there's not a community around them, if they aren't able to go home to somewhere where they feel safe, if there's not like enough food, if there's, trauma, alcoholism, like all of these things, they build up. So it's all sort of part of that gap, the education gap kind of goes along with the financial gap that goes along with, all of these gaps that kind of where we're left behind. So I don't know, I don't think any simple answer for it. I think is just to, remaining dedicated inside of the classroom to these students. I guess we can probably do a better job getting parents engaged, I imagine, but I don't know, I'm not in your position. I hope that answered in some ways. I feel like I don't really know, I guess, is the long and the short of it, but I do think it's there's a myriad of things that are happening that one doesn't have control with inside the classroom. Yeah.
I think this needs to be our last question.
Thank you. Enjoyed the film? I kind of like the idea of reparations through civil litigation.
Okay.
I think that there's certainly more hope than John Conyers found going through the government.
Mm-hmm.
We saw what happened in Bruce's Beach.
Yep.
That was a big success story.
Yep.
In the course of doing the film and your other work, have you found any other cases that are either in the courts, proposing to go through the courts, or have been successful?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we were looking at a lot of cases. It's how we found the Harrison case to begin with, because they were in the courts for, they sued. They were in the courts for so long, and unfortunately, they weren't successful, and they're still kind of like hobbling along with their movement. But there are, but not to any really great success. That's why I think the California, hopefully set a precedent, because that was just shocking that they actually got it back, and I think it did. The Harrison people were like, oh, maybe we have a chance. But we had approached Warnock, Senator Warnock. It's in his district, and we wanted an interview because we were trying to press it. And they were just, he won by such a narrow margin that they were just like, nah, we're not. I mean, maybe but they were just like, we're not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Like, go forward and be fruitful. We're not going to do it right now. So I do agree with you. I think that litigation, is, if we have all of these pieces that kind of build, I'm still kind of a purist in that way with Therity, which is like, no, show me the money. We want the cash. But I think all of these things help build a bigger case for pushing, senators and congresspeople to, be forced to support it through their constituents supporting it. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So lovely to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.